Hello, my name is Peter Moran, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a TED Talk by Dr. Brian Little. The TED Talk is titled, Who Are You Really? The Puzzle of Personality. Some information on Dr. Brian Little. He is an internationally acclaimed scholar and is currently a professor at Cambridge University. Although in the past he has also been a professor at other Ivy League schools, such as Harvard. Currently he is furthering his research in psychology, and right now he's specifically interested on how your free traits and personal projects help affect our lifestyle, and how other people will see you through the course of your life depending on your traits. He describes himself as an introvert with a passion to share new ideas about his research through bouts of extroversion. So, the puzzle of personality. The dictionary definition of personality is the combination of characteristics or qualities that form an individual's distinctive character. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the different types of trait psychology that each individual has, and the different types of natures that shape who we are. I'm also going to be going into how these traits affect our everyday lives, and I'll also be telling you about something called a free trait, which Dr. Brian Little goes into. Also, I'm going to include the link to the TED Talk below in the description, so if you have any desire to watch that before I continue with my summary, please do so now. So, Dr. Little goes into 5 universal traits and their contrasts. These 5 universal traits hold an acronym called OCEAN. O standing for open to experience, which is in sharp contrast to close to experience, which kind of speaks for itself. C stands for consciousness, where you are aware of your everyday life and the different things that affect it throughout the course of the day and your thought process, as opposed to those who are more careless and don't think too much about their actions. E stands for extroversion, which is people who are more social and require stimulation through the social activities of other people around them. They thrive more off of social experiences and having other people there, as opposed to introversion, in which these people are more, they like to be on their own more often. They like to be given time to think, and they don't really require the stimulation that extroverts need to thrive. A stands for agreeability, in which some people aren't as agreeable, which is the contrast. And finally, N stands for certain neurotic individuals versus more stable individuals. So these 5 universal traits and their contrasts are ones that everybody shares on one end of the spectrum or the other. These are all things that we can relate to. So coming from those 5 universal traits, there are 3 sets of natures that physically affect us. Brian Little describes a biogenic nature, which is our neuropsychology and our chemical makeup, things that we can't necessarily control, things that are in our DNA. Then there's the sociogenic nature, in which it's the social and cultural aspects that help to shape who we are, from when we're a baby to when we die. Social and cultural aspects will shape us throughout the course of our lives. And finally, there is the idiogenic nature, in which there are the different types of things that make up who we are as individuals and what sets us apart from the rest of the crowd. So, some interesting facts about the effect of our personalities. There are a gazillion different types of combinations you can have from just like the 5 universal traits next to the 3 natures that make up who we are. And there are endless combinations. And through those combinations, it creates who we are as individuals, along with different personal projects that Dr. Brian Little goes into more later on. So, because of these different traits, we all have different emotions, different feelings. And here are some interesting facts that were given in regards to people with specific traits, more on the topic of extroverts and introverts, because those 2 sets of people are very definable. Extroverts are more likely to come up with nicknames for people right after meeting them, whereas introverts usually wait until the person tells them what to call them. Extroverts rely more heavily on caffeine than introverts. This one was something I found very interesting. Extroverts prefer more concrete black and white language, whereas introverts prefer contextually complex sentences and aren't as straightforward. They like to beat around the bush kind of when it comes to a certain topic. An example Brian Little gives us is when him and his coworker, who was as I'll once again say, Brian Little is an introvert, and he said that his coworker was an extrovert. They were complete opposites. So, when he was going into a meeting with another person who asked them what they thought about another coworker, Brian Little beat around the bush a little bit. He talked about how certain characteristics this coworker had, could seem to make him a little standoffish, as opposed to his extroverted coworker who just flat out said, yeah, he's an asshole. So I thought that was something very interesting, how extroverts are more to the point. On the topic of sexual intercourse, extroverts are actually more likely to engage in the act than introverts throughout the course of a month. There is something that Brian Little goes into that kind of strays from the path of the 5 universal traits and the 3 natures that set us apart from the rest. These things that Brian Little describes are called free traits. And these traits aren't things that necessarily fall within our character, so that's why I find it very interesting. We willingly do these traits in order to achieve a goal, even though we're acting out of character. Brian Little even gives us an example, saying, our loved one is in the hospital, and normally you're an agreeable person, but recently you've been disagreeable. But that is because you're trying to break down the administrative barriers in the hospital in order to get something for your loved one. So because of this, because of your disagreeability, you've just adding a trait that isn't necessarily you, and sometimes I might carry on into other social aspects in which people will see that you're acting out of character, in which it's very strange for them. But not everybody knows the issues you're going through. And these different issues you're going through, Brian Little describes as personal projects, in which it's not necessarily a project, but it's something that has a set goal and something you're trying to achieve. Brian Little describes free traits as this quote, where we enact a script in order to advance in a core project in our lives. So that definitely can connect to the loved one being in the hospital or many other things. You're trying to climb the corporate ladder, so you might be doing things out of character in order to achieve something. Brian Little's core project is to profess to his students, and this occupation is a little out of character for him because he's introverted. And obviously, being a professor, you need to be extroverted. So, even acting out of character on purpose, individuals need to have time to prepare, in which Brian Little describes he loves giving information to his students and being extroverted in that fact, but he still needs time to recover. He doesn't normally thrive off of that stimulation, so he needs to take some time alone in order to recuperate and just have time to himself and his thoughts. So, here are some questions I have, mostly aimed at Dr. Brian Little and the TED Talk as a whole. The first question is, when it comes to introverts and extroverts, there are a lot of different variables that affect our desire for stimulation. So, is it possible to be both introverted and extroverted? Question number 2. When it comes down to the three natures that help define us, are there similar allusions to the theory nature versus nurture? And finally, question number 3. How often do we, as individuals, stray from the characteristics that we think define us? Is it for a goal in which we ultimately decide is for the better of our health? And that is all I have today. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I hope you learned something new. Thank you.